What makes Gran Turismo games fun to play? While you take a second to think of your response to that question, allow me to give my answer. Having played Gran Turismo 3, 4, Sport, and another certain title as of this video, what I have personally come to love about this franchise is the passion of cars mixed with the pacing and gameplay. For anyone unfamiliar, Gran Turismo is a simcade racing game franchise that allows you to drive a wide variety of cars in a large selection of events, but with just the right amount of roadblocks in place to ensure that there's a sense of progression throughout your playtime. As other people have said in their videos about Gran Turismo, in fact I'll be paraphrasing video game essay creator Casey for this next line here, you start slow and end fast, but how you get there is completely up to you. Everyone's journey on a new playthrough, minus some exceptions including the certain title in question we'll be talking about in this video, will be entirely unique. On top of that, Gran Turismo games double as interactive car museums, often with paragraphs of text and tons of stats accompanying these vehicles. In combination with the freedom that these games give, this allows for you to really get invested with these vehicles, since you're able to go at your own pace and pick the cars that you have a personal investment in for events. The perfect mix of passion about cars, fun gameplay, and a sprinkling of roadblocks to ensure that there's a satisfying journey from start to finish. At least, that's what's considered the golden standard by Gran Turismo veterans, and it's a golden standard that I as a newer player stand by too. That doesn't mean Polyphony Digital has always stuck by that golden standard though. From small incidents such as everyone starting off with a Honda Fit RS and GT6, to the larger issue of the lack of a satisfying single-player experience initially when GT Sport launched, to yeah, I can't beat around the bush anymore, to the mess that is Gran Turismo 7. A little over a year ago, I grabbed a copy of GT7 after the firestorm that was spawned as a result of this game's abysmal launch had died down, and at first, I was enjoying myself. In fact, in my video titled "Nearly All Video Game Reviews Are Valid," I even said that I felt as if I was getting my money's worth from it, which, to be fair, I did get a pre-owned physical copy, so I didn't have to pay $70. It's a good thing that I refrained from making a review or otherwise talk in depth about GT7 though, because now that I've played some more of it, along with having played some earlier GT games as of late, my perception has changed. I do still feel as if I got my money's worth from this game, and I can still enjoy the core driving experience, but I cannot deny that I do not view Gran Turismo 7 as a whole in a positive light anymore. This is a deep dive into Gran Turismo 7 single player and why it's an utter failure in game design. Some of you might be puzzled right out the gate. How can I say that Gran Turismo 7 is a failure in game design, yet I can also say that the core driving experience is fun? I cannot deny that the act of driving around on a track and racing against other opponents is fun. The cars and tracks are all beautifully detailed, the physics model feels great, the added immersion of the feedback from the vibrations coming from the PlayStation 5 controller as you drive over curbs or feel the resistance of the brakes as you slow down for a corner feels wonderful. When you're out there on the track, GT7 is at its best. It's everything that surrounds the on-track experience that I have an issue with. Just because the core gameplay loop is fun, that doesn't mean the rest of the game is well designed. Starting with the freedom of choice for the player. What freedom of choice do you even have here? In GT7, the experience of gathering and driving cars is heavily scripted and linear through the cafe menu books. In a fresh playthrough of this game, you will be asked to collect sets of cars that all relate to one another in some way. These cars can be collected by winning events or by straight up buying them from places like the used car dealership. Get all the cars, and ta-da! You did it! You then move on to the next menu book, where the cycle begins anew. All of the exploration and awe that went into you being able to freely pick whatever cars you want in whatever order you want is gone here. You do still have the option of freely buying cars that aren't a part of your current cafe menu book, but you're heavily incentivized to not do that. Not only are you using up funds that you could be using on buying a car that's on the current menu book, you could be using up funds that are needed to upgrade your current car that's needed to do the necessary events. And if you purchase a car only to then see it on a later menu book where you could have gotten it for free by completing an event, you're out of luck there too. The car valuation service where you sell cars in this game isn't available until you complete all of the main cafe menu books. Rather than everyone's journey being unique with what cars they buy/earn, drive, upgrade, and sell, for the first 20-something hours it takes for the main cafe menu books to be completed, everyone will be buying/earning the same cars, driving on the same tracks, and ultimately having the exact same experience. Linearity in experiences isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but after experiencing the general sense of freedom that was in the previous games, general sense due to some of the roadblocks that were put in place, this linearity left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. Alright then, well, what about after you complete all of the main cafe menu books? Surely the game opens up and follows the golden standard then, right? I will admit that Gran Turismo 7 does open up a bit from this point forward. You're able to complete events that weren't a part of the main cafe menu books, you're more free to purchase what cars you want. I mean, things seem to be in order, except when you go back to the cafe, you'll be given the option to complete extra cafe menu books. Now, granted, these are optional, but they still have the issue of changing how cars are viewed in this game. Rather than a car being bought because you truly want it, car purchases in this game now feel like they're being done to check off boxes on a checklist because, well, that's exactly what's happening here. In exchange for completing these additional menu books, you're offered roulette tickets, which are another aspect of the utter failure of game design that is Gran Turismo 7 single player. These roulette tickets offer things such as engines for engine swaps, prize cars, additional credits, and on the note of car collecting, invitations. What are invitations, you may be wondering? Brace yourself, because you'll probably lose some brain cells upon hearing how asinine their implementation is here. Certain cars are locked behind invitations, where you need to acquire, well, an invitation from a specific manufacturer from a roulette ticket in order to have a window of opportunity to buy them. You can have enough money to buy an invite-only car at any given moment, but if you don't have an invitation, then you're SOL. And you heard me right, I said a window of opportunity to buy the car. You used to only have 14 days, 2 weeks from when you got the invitation to buy the car, but nowadays you have 30. Meaning if you don't buy whatever car you've got your eyes on within that time frame, the invitation expires and the car is unavailable to buy until you get lucky enough to get another invite. And you also heard me right, the only way to get them is through roulette tickets, some of which aren't even able to give you the chance for an invitation. Either the ticket isn't high enough for an invitation to be included as a possible prize, tickets are rated 1 through 6 stars, or it's an engine or prize car ticket, for example. Thankfully, you aren't able to buy these roulette tickets with real money. Though, given what happened when Gran Turismo 7 launched, I wouldn't be surprised if there were plans to introduce microtransactions for them given how they work in-game. If those plans were real, then I have no doubt that Polyphony Digital and Sony were using the credit microtransactions to test the waters first, but given how boiling hot the waters were, the roulette ticket microtransaction plans were scrapped. You do get 1 roulette ticket each day if you complete the daily workout for driving 28 miles, but it's still all luck-based, from what rarity of ticket you get to what you ultimately get from the ticket itself. Do I even need to give an example of buying a car in a previous Gran Turismo game here? Oh, but speaking of buying things with real-world money, let's talk about the prices for some of the cars in this game.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
It makes sense that the better and more rare the car is, the more expensive it'll be. However, proper balancing needs to be done to make sure that the player isn't grinding for days on end to get a car, while also making sure they have to work for it to some degree to make the final purchase worth it. This is something that GT7 also fails in, and to explain why, we have to take a trip back in time to when the game first launched. If you're a racing game fan, or even just a casual enjoyer of the genre, you more than likely saw the absolute firestorm of backlash directed at Gran Turismo 7 for its microtransactions. Whether Polyphony Digital did this themselves or if they were being given direct orders from Sony, the publisher, has yet to be figured out, at least to my knowledge. If someone does have an answer to that and can provide proof, do let me and everyone else watching know in the comments. In any case, when early review copies of the game were sent out, the microtransactions had not been enabled yet, therefore they weren't in the game. When the early positive reviews started flooding in along with the full release of the game, only then were the microtransactions enabled after thousands of purchases of the game were made. As people got deeper into Gran Turismo 7, after it was discovered that the late game events meaning past the main cafe menu books, didn't pay out a lot of money in comparison to what the prices of the higher end cars were, along with the fact that the car valuation service just so happened to not be in the game whatsoever at this point yet, along with the fact that in some updates, payouts for races that people were grinding got lowered seemingly in retaliation, meant that either Polyphony Digital, Sony, or both parties were betting on players purchasing lots of microtransactions. This sent the Gran Turismo and racing game community at large into a frenzy. The conversation around GT7 got so dire that the series director, Kazunori Yamauchi, released a personal statement. First, apologizing for an outage where players weren't even able to play the game for a while because of an issue with an update. Unfortunately, the game has always online DRM, even for the single player. But then addressing the pricing of cars along with how he wished for players to engage with the game. Regarding his comment on the prices of cars, he said,
quote, "In GT7, I would like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races, even without microtransactions. At the same time, the pricing of cars is an important element that conveys their value and rarity, so I do think it's important for it to be linked with real-world prices." End quote.
Ah, yes, because we play video games to further immerse ourselves in the struggles of daily life, not as a temporary escape from our problems. It's not like we play games like Gran Turismo 7 to drive cars that we'll probably never be able to drive in our lives because they're too expensive and the vast majority of us aren't professional race car drivers, and video games make it possible to get a taste of that experience. No, we want to play out the struggle of having access to a crucial means of transportation in the video games that we play too, because real life isn't enough of a struggle to get through each and every day. Okay, I'll stop being sarcastic. Real talk now. With all due respect towards Kazunori Yamauchi, what the f was he on when he said this? I do agree with the aspect of making sure that the value and rarity of a car, as he puts it here, is conveyed properly. It would feel weird for something like an RX-8 to be given the same kind of prestige as a Formula 1 car, for example. But conveying that value and rarity by jacking up the prices to real-world values is not the answer. Or if it is the answer, then adjustments need to be made to ensure that the payouts for events are balanced so the game doesn't become grindy, which, interestingly enough, he does address grinding for credits here as well.
Quote, "I want to make GT7 a game in which you can enjoy a variety of cars lots of different ways, and if possible would like to try to avoid a situation where a player must mechanically keep replaying certain events over and over again." End quote.
I am going to replay these two clips back to back for you to read and listen. Afterward, pause the video for a moment to process both of those quotes.
Quote, "In GT7, I would like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races, even without microtransactions. At the same time, the pricing of cars is an important element that conveys their value and rarity, so I do think it's important for it to be linked with real-world prices." End quote. Quote, "I want to make GT7 a game in which you can enjoy a variety of cars lots of different ways, and if possible would like to try to avoid a situation where a player must mechanically keep replaying certain events over and over again." End quote.
Done reading and processing both quotes? What did you think? If you thought that these two quotes are polar opposites of one another with Kazunori contradicting himself, then you have the same thoughts I first had when reading both of these. On the one hand, Kazunori wants to convey the value and rarity of these cars by matching them up to real-world prices, which for the lower-end cars isn't an issue since the payouts for events are balanced for those. But for the higher-end cars, the payouts for most events aren't balanced. Then on the other hand, Kazunori wishes for players to not grind events over and over. To be clear, I'm not saying that the Sunday Cup should give you enough credits to buy something from the Legends dealership in just 3 races. That would be absurd. The easier the event, the lower the payout. The harder the event, the higher the payout. What I have an issue with are these harder late game events that still incentivize grinding. Okay then, well, the solutions to this problem are quite simple. Either lower the prices of some cars to more fairly balance those out with the current payouts for late game events, or increase late game event payouts to more fairly balance those out with the current prices for cars. You want to know what Kazunori and Polyphony Digital did? They added some more events with solid enough payouts, but then didn't do much in the way of changing any prices beyond that. The prices of cars remained the same, the payouts for a lot of the events remained the same, and while some events with good payouts were added, because the game still didn't give a good enough reason to not do this, people quickly began grinding these new events that paid well. Because why wouldn't you want to do the best paying events in the shortest time possible if the game is going to be so stubborn with how much it wants you to pay up for some of the cars? Kazunori failed to understand that we play video games to escape reality, not to further immerse ourselves in it because reality is pain, misery, suffering. God, please take me out of this world. And Kazunori failed in avoiding a situation where we grind the game for money. The series director at Polyphony Digital, the one who calls the shots and gives orders to everyone else outside of Sony, the one who could make his own wishes come true, assuming Sony doesn't have anything to do with preventing Kazunori from steering the ship in the right direction, failed in his own objective. Gran Turismo 7, everyone, an utter failure in game design. Well then, where does that leave GT7 and the Gran Turismo series as a whole? Given how long GT7 has been out and how long these issues have remained, I think at this point, it's safe to say that there's no saving this game. While the core driving experience is still super fun, everything else surrounding that has such a backwards, asinine implementation to it that I'm just left scratching my head in confusion and frustration. Given that the cafe menu books are the core of what GT7 single player revolves around, it will always be fundamentally flawed. Other things like the invitations to buy certain cars, payouts being adjusted to be more fair, and so that the series producer can achieve his own vision for what he wants, things like that can be adjusted, but given those adjustments haven't happened as of yet, I doubt they'll be coming anytime soon, if at all. As for the Gran Turismo series as a whole, I can't say since I'm not a veteran of the series. Yeah, I've played games like Gran Turismo 3 and 4, but I don't feel like I've had enough experience to be able to accurately say what could possibly happen moving forward. The one thing I can say is that no matter what the next Gran Turismo game brings, both Sony and Polyphony Digital need to get their shit together. Although distrust in Sony is nothing new nowadays, Gran Turismo 7 doesn't help the company's case. And the Gran Turismo community has lost a lot of faith in Kazunori Yamauchi and Polyphony Digital as a whole after all of this. I may not be as personally connected with Kazunori as I haven't been a Gran Turismo player as long as I've been, say, an Ace Combat player, for example, but I can still confidently say that I'm not exactly impressed with the guy. I'm worried about whether he can even handle the responsibility of leading a development team to make a game anymore, especially after he's been so contradictory and stubborn about what he wants versus what he's done or not done. Again, assuming Sony didn't directly step in to stop him from implementing any positive changes. I'm still interested in what the next Gran Turismo game will bring, but whenever the next game does launch, I'll be going into it with a very skeptical pair of eyes. Hopefully my pessimism for the next game doesn't come to fruition, but I can't help but to be this way after the utter failure of game design that is Gran Turismo 7.